Thank you for listening to Black Revolutionary Theater Weekly, the podcast for the revolutionary writing that centers Black people, identities, and experiences in the vital examinations of our zeitgeist.
Goddaughter by Mieko Gavia. Read by Heather Harvey.
When the bullet hit Nina, she died, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. That was the logic of the world. Cars hit you, and you die. Knives pierce you, and you die. Cops shoot you, and you die. If death were reversible, then no one, Nina thought, in the deepest, most secret places of her heart, would have use of Christianity, because then there would be no mystery. Of course Jesus would come right back. He'd rise up like a vampire zombie with his 12 vampire zombie followers, and they'd all eat his body and drink his blood for breakfast, and then the King of Kings and the Fishers of Men would set off to conquer the world. He'd munch, crunch, crunch on the right hand of the Father, and the whole forgiveness thing would be kind of moot, because he'd wind up chewing the other cheek of whoever nailed him to the damn cross anyway. Or at least, that was what she told herself when she fell down. When Nina was a young child in Indiana and would have breakdowns of wailing and hitting and spitting, her mama swore up and down that she was not her daughter. "You must be the devil's daughter because my Nina don't act like that," Mama Justine would say. Sometimes the words slid out like a sigh, sometimes like a curse. Sometimes she just muttered it behind her teeth at the store, clenching Nina's hand as she dragged her out to the parking lot for a beating. Not a beating, like the kind that left Vaughn Duluth missing half a pinky in 3 weeks of school, but a little beating, the kind administered with a hairbrush or a well-chosen switch, the kind that left Nina with temporary welts and a permanent temper. 3 years and 2 family counselors later, Nina would learn that her beatings and Vaughn's were not so different in essence, but that's a conversation for a later time. The beatings and her mother's accompanying lectures drove Nina crazy, and it made her want to act out more. Every time her mother tried to beat her, Nina screeched and spat and clawed. She gave as good as she got, and by the time she was 12, the noise grew so loud that one neighbor complained, then another, and eventually Nina was sent to live with her mother's youngest sister, Nina's godmother, Aunt Rita. Rita was not only her mama's closest living relative, she was just about the only person who could stand Justine for any bit of time. Rita and Justine, it turned out, were completely complementary. Rita was an amazing baker and a so-so cook, which was fine because Justine was a fantastic cook and a horrible baker. Justine was an amazing singer, and Rita was a phenomenal dancer. So once a month, one would drive 2 hours to the other's house, and they'd hold concerts just for the two of them. Justine was impeccably dressed and meticulously tidy. Both Rita's style and her apartment were twin whirlwinds of color and tchotchke. But the most important fact for this story is that all the qualities Mama Justine tried to stamp out of Nina, her willfulness, her laissez-faire attitude toward wrinkled fabric, her tender-headedness at the hot comb. These were things that Auntie Rita didn't care about in the slightest. The things Rita did care about were which mushrooms to gather to make frittatas, and when was the best time to get out of bed for one's favorite cartoons, and all the gentlest ways to make Nina's hair sprawling into coily ringlets. But her favorite things were the ghost stories. Auntie Rita was the unofficial family historian, and knew everything there was to know about their ancestors stretching all the way back pre-emancipation. She knew about great-great-great-grandma Gloria's run to freedom with Harriet Tubman. She knew about how great-great-grandpa fought in the Civil War. And she knew, or said she knew, about the haints and spirits that affected and afflicted the family. The haints, Aunt Rita said, were energies of ancestors manifest. They appeared on strong, windy days and kept company with either demons or angels or something unknown and more ancient. Some became poltergeists of slave owners who forced their way into the family line. Some became friendly nudges telling one to use these sort of spices in the stew or to take a different path on half-moon nights. But some haints, who were restless and restful all at once, who had a particular purpose with the living, became a meld of the African in their blood in any culture they touched, and Aunt Rita's favorite of these were the harpies. She told Nina this over dessert one night. The two speared hot dogs over a fancy camp stove in the park, and Nina giggled and gasped and quaked all at once. The Harpies, said Rita, came into the family line during the 1900s Greek migration to Boston, when poor Aegean Nikos took great-grandma Betty for his secret wife. The two had a tumultuous relationship that resulted in green-eyed children and a quiet yet ugly divorce. But their 3 daughters, made of their sweat and sin and passion, told stories of ancient Greek wind spirits that cleaved men in two and carried them off in bloody pieces. The 3 sisters' sea-glass eyes would flash as they stretched out their skinny arms like talons. They'd speak of the bad men on their father's side carried away by their carrion-starved lovers. They'd speak of the sausages their great-grandmothers would bring back to their children in place of the men who had beat or hassled them, or who'd taken their naive husbands for fools. And they, like Aunt Rita, cackled with glee. But Aunt Rita was dead now, past 6 months from a pain in her lung, and soon Nina would be too. Already the policeman's bullet tore a jagged pain through her lungs, and the sticky blood soaked her shoes, and final breaths bubbled up from her throat. She didn't feel anything but the thunk as she hit the carpet. The bullet's sharp punch in her chest, and the final winds whooshing from her lungs. Just like Aunt Rita, Nina thought. A tumor in her chest, a bullet in mine. She could hear her mother screaming. A minute ago, she was screaming in rage, taking out her pain at Aunt Rita's passing on her equally distraught daughter. The two had flung themselves at each other, tearing into flesh and soul with razor-sharp words. They were loud again. Too loud. Someone next door must have called the police. Someone next door must have said they were frightened. Someone next door must have asked for a welfare check on poor Nina. Poor Nina was dying now, or so poor Nina thought. She thought her last breaths would be short and stifling, but instead they kept going and going and going, gaining strength. Her last death sigh swirled about her, lifting her chest off the ground, convulsing her middle as if she was vomiting, to a sitting position. This vomiting of air kept going. Nina then noticed that the screaming was not coming from her mother, but from the 2 policemen. Her mother was standing there, glassy-eyed, as strong black wind punched its way through her throat. In fact, the blood she now felt soaking the ankles of her jeans was not coming from her either. The black wind coming from Nina and Justine enveloped the screaming men, and after a 5-minute eternity of screeching winds and screeching, crunching, twisting flesh, the wind and the officers were gone. Mostly. There was hardly any blood left over. The hungry wind had slurped that up like broth. But there was the matter of the leftover police car to attend to, and potential alibis to plan, and the disturbing gift of entrails left splattered across the tile foyer. But Nina and her mother wouldn't worry about that. They wouldn't know that the police officers were not only the jerks of their department, but tied up in some unsavory activities, and the normally dogged precinct was better for their loss. They wouldn't know that a third wind had crumpled the police car to the size of a pop can. All they knew was that they were alive, and for the moment, safe. They embraced each other, apologizing and sobbing and promising to be better. And they would be. But first, they had a floor to clean, and sausages to make.
You've been listening to Black Revolutionary Theater Weekly, produced by Black Revolutionary Theater Workshop. You can support BRTW by giving us a like and a follow on Twitter or Instagram at @TheBRTW and on Facebook at Black Revolutionary Theater Workshop. And you can help us support and serve more Black and Revolutionary artists by donating via Fractured Atlas or joining the crew over at Patreon.